There we go. So anyway, you were introduced to Dr. Red Cross. Then what happened?
Well, the doctor asked the nurse where she found me. She told him that I somehow wandered in and pointed out the holes I had. Even when I kept telling them that I was fine, much to my annoyance, the doctor kept insisting that I should be examined. And that's when he gave me the pill that he said would make me relax. When I refused to take it, Red Cross told me in a kind of warning tone that our queen would have taken it if she was having a bad day. When I didn't give in, the nurse suddenly used her horn, grabbed my forelegs, and pulled them behind my back. The doctor used his hooves to force my mouth open to take that pill, even pinched my nose to make me swallow. And then everything went dark.
So you were captured?
Uh-huh. I completely blacked out. The next thing I knew, I woke up on a bed in some decaying room. The white paint on the bed had peeled and showed patches of rust. The concrete walls were chipped, and I guess they had mold on them. A single broken light bulb dangled from the ceiling like a cracked cocoon. And the mattress? Every direction I moved, bugs scurried underneath me. There was only one tiny window, but it was barred. I sat up and tried to figure out where I was, but my mind was all fuzzy. I was so disoriented that even standing up proved to be a challenge. I stumbled and my legs wiggled so much that I had to lean on walls for support. My goal then was to get out of that room, but the only way to do so was through a door that was completely made out of metal and had slots in it. You'd think the door would be locked after they captured me and threw me in there, but it wasn't. After giving it a push, I found it led out to a hallway that was in the same condition as my room, if not worse. Paint was peeling off everywhere, the tiles were smashed, anything that was made out of metal was rusting, and there were tables and wheelchairs that were turned over or just stood there. I noticed that the ground was littered in millions of pages. I didn't bother to see what they were at the time. Also, everything was dark and quiet, like being on top of a mountain where no wind was blowing. And yet, that hallway was filled with emotion, but none of them were positive ones. There was a sense of sadness, depression, dread, fear, and anger that was so strong that I could practically taste its bitterness.
Okay, so what did you do then?
What would anyone do? I went exploring, even though I did feel a bit sick. While I did so, I wondered what happened to everyone in that hospital, and how long I was out for. After a bit of exploring, I found out how large this place actually was. Hallway after hallway, empty room after empty room, and I couldn't find any signs of life. All I found were cobwebs and dust that covered the ceiling where insects crawled. It was like walking inside of a large tomb. I passed by rooms of beds falling apart, shoes, glasses, cups, and even a room that had toys in it.
Toys? Like Foles toys?
I guess so. The ones I saw had a smaller bed frame compared to the rest of the place. I called out to see if anyone was there, but no one responded. Then as I entered into a large room where there were a bunch of tables and benches, I saw...
Resto trailed off, clearing his throat.
I thought I saw a shadow, but it was so quick that I couldn't determine if there was one there at all. Yet, I did see it was next to a door that, the closer I got to it, I thought I heard a sound of music playing. So, I opened it to find a flight of stairs and a sign that pointed downwards that read basement. The lower I went, the louder that the music became, but at the same time, I started hearing another sound.
What else did you hear?
Look, this is going to sound weird, but as I neared the floor of the basement, I heard someone with a high-pitched voice screaming, but that scream was muffled like someone was gagged. So at the bottom of the stairs, and behind a pair of double doors, I noticed that there was some light coming from the cracks of the doors. So I opened it. There I found another set of maze-like hallways. But this time, you can see into the rooms because all of them had a huge window to peer through. And this hallway was illuminated by light bulbs that still gave the place an eerie yellow glow.
And what did you see in these rooms?
Well, at first, a few of them were empty, except for some of the weird machines in there. Like There was this one room where there were these two huge tubs with a bunch of tubes in them like tree roots. Another room had a machine with a table that had switches and meters, but even with the light, there was still some decay that was going on. Like some of the windows were broken or the tools in these rooms were disorganized, like someone had left them in a hurry. Then another turn. I saw a group of ponies in white that were crowding around a particular window. They were at the place where both the music and the muffled screaming were at their loudest. So I disguised myself as a nurse and quietly walked over to see what they were looking at.
There was a moment of silence before the detective spoke.
Yes?
I never knew that you ponies torture your own.
What?
Hoof Print asked in total surprise.
What are you talking about?
You want to know what I saw?
Resto questioned.
Through the window, not only did I find out the music was coming from a phonograph playing, but the muffled cries were coming from a colt that was held down on a table. One of the doctors held his head, two held his legs, another was on his chest, and Dr. Red Cross was holding a pick in one hoof and a hammer in the other. While the little guy was squirming around and screaming his head off, that monster talked about what angle the pick should go in when it enters between his eyes and his snout. I even remember what he was telling the poor kid. "Don't worry," he said. "This will only hurt for a second and you'll be done before you know it."
Hold on. Are you telling me that you saw this doctor perform a lobotomy on a colt?
If that's what you call sticking a thin spike in his eye before hammering it in a couple of times, then yes. Ugh. Even now I can still hear the screams that kid made, along with the sickening pops that I heard. I never thought anyone could do anything this barbaric in my life. Sure, even we changelings have heard the rumors of what Sombra did when he was in charge. But that was sickening.
Okay, so what happened next?
Well, as soon as that monster started hammering in, I just jumped, thereby alerting the other doctors and nurses that happened to be there. Suddenly, they started to question me about what I was doing there, and I was so nervous that I think I blew my cover. Dropping the disguise, I made a run for it. But since I was so dazed and the basement was like a maze, I got lost where I was going. They were calling out to me, but I couldn't see where they were while I was being chased. The next thing I knew, I was suddenly knocked to the ground and felt something sharp piercing into my neck before I blacked out.
Now hold on. How can you not be sure of what you saw?
The detective pointed out.
You clearly stated that you saw this. So what's making you doubt it?
Because when I woke up, I found myself back in that same decaying room as before.
Oh, I see. So you think that you just simply dreamed it up?
Again, I don't really know for sure.
What makes you say that?
Tell me, do I have anything on my neck?
Hold on a sec. Lean forward a bit. I don't see anything. Maybe it was just some night terror.
There's more. When I woke up, I found that I was feeling the exact same way, woozy and all, and stumbled towards the door. When I got to it, I found it was locked. But before I could hobble over to the bed and figure out how to get out of there, the door opened to one of those wheeled tables before I passed out again.
I think I'm beginning to see a pattern here.
When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the squeaking noise of the wheels from that table. I opened my eyes, blinking a couple of times to see that not only was I strapped down to the table, but it was moving. Only, I couldn't see anyone. There wasn't anyone that was pushing or pulling me around. Not only that, but I also found that I was gagged, too. A while later, I was wheeled into a room where there was a halo of light, and Dr. Red Cross's shadow, too. "What a pity," he said. "As a patient, I thought you knew the rules by now. Never go down to the basement without any of the staff saying so. But since you did, it looks like we're going to have to punish you." Then some of the nurses circled around and put some brace around my head and rubbed some liquid on my stomach before I was blindfolded. Now, since we've never seen a pony like you before, we need to get to know you a bit. We're just going to take a look inside you to know what you're really like. Sound good? But I couldn't respond. He asked for a scalpel. And...
Resto started crying.
I can't.
He croaked.
Hey now,
The detective's chair creaked.
what's wrong? What did that doctor do?
It hurts so much.
Resto cried.
You just kept cutting and prodding my insides.